When you think of a police officer, the first thing that probably comes to your mind is someone that is an authority figure. And these days, it seems that we look at them as someone that's looking to just take your rights away or diminish your rights in some way. And sometimes I question, why is it that we have police officers if we have these feelings toward them? But then I think that I really wouldn't want to live in a world that had no police officers, because then I think things would just be kind of chaotic. Police officers are employed to uphold the law and keep people safe. They work for the people. But you see a lot of things in the news lately where cops are just misusing their authority, and you see things about police brutality and misuse of force. However, if you look at a lot of media and you just do a simple Google search on police, just Google News search, you'll see some headlines, and the way that they word the headlines, it's meant to point the finger at police and basically just make them look like the bad guy just by the wording alone. But then on the other hand, if you were to look up, maybe a firefighter or a paramedic, you don't really hear, all these bad, negative things that kind of tarnish the image of them. But you always see it with police. Now, I see that there's a lot of things that go on in the news that, you know, it's pretty, there's no reason for why police are doing the things that they do when you see these cases of police brutality and misuse of force. However, there's some instances where they actually are doing what needs to be done. The crazy thing to think about is there was a recent story in which an 8-year-old was trying to kill herself with a knife, and police got there, and the 8-year-old had the knife, like, pointed at herself, and because it's such a small child, the manner in which they handled it was they ended up tasing her. And this sounds pretty extreme to tase an 8-year-old, as it's even worded in any news stories about it. But when you look at the case and you see that the courts actually judged that police actually did their job correctly, it kind of makes you wonder. So I looked more into this, and it actually does seem that the police were doing their job. I recently talked to a military police officer, PFC Ely, and she says that there are 7 different levels for use of force. The first and, least lethal obviously would be verbal communication, and that occurs before, during, and after any kind of call that you're doing. That once you make contact with the suspect, you talk to them, see what's going on. Even if it escalates, you still maintain that verbal communication. If it escalates more, then you use the next level of force, which is unarmed self defense. And then the next level after that is using what they have as pepper spray or mace, or a taser. And that's both of those are that third level of using force. The reason for that is that they have to choose whether to use pepper spray or a taser. If you use the spray, you cannot taser someone because of how flammable that mace pepper spray is. So sometimes you choose a taser because once you tase someone, you can't use the pepper spray or vice versa. Because then after that, it becomes more brutal and deadly force after that level of force. Because next you have the baton, which is meant to impact someone. Um, you know, when you have a police officer who's been trained to use that baton, they can actually really hurt someone. And then the next level is to use police canine units, use dogs. After that is show of deadly force, where you actually withdraw your gun and you show that you're ready to use it. And then the final seventh step in that use of force is using deadly force, where you actually fire that weapon. So, I mean, depending on the situation, you choose which of these that you do. So, in the case of the 8-year-old, when they tased her, obviously it seems verbal communication was happening. They weren't in any position where they needed to use any unarmed self defense because it's an 8-year-old. But when you consider those 7 different levels, the next obvious thing actually was to tase the 8-year-old. And that's why this court ruled in the police's favor, because it doesn't make sense to pepper spray this girl if all she's doing is holding a knife trying to cut herself. And you can't tackle or use a baton against an 8-year-old if you're a grown adult as a police officer. So that's why it seems, you use a somewhat long range, mid range projectile weapon like a taser, and that is why they ended up tasing the 8-year-old. And, you know, the mother, when this happened, praised the cops that, they saved her daughter from hurting herself because a taser only lasts for 5 seconds and it's done. Um, as opposed to like pepper spray that can last like up to an hour or more, maybe less depending on the person, but you're looking at about an hour if you get pepper sprayed for that thing, for that to wear off. With a taser, it's just 5 seconds, unless you continue tasing someone. But each time you tase someone, it lasts 5 seconds. But the thing is, like when you look at that media story, you look at the headline, it does not make it look like, you know, they did the correct thing. The headline seems to imply that the police are in the wrong. But once you read the article and read more about the case, then you see that the police actually did their job properly. But at first glance, that's what you see about a lot of police stories. And it kind of makes sense when you look at almost every type of media about police, like police shows, dramas, movies. They're always about like crooked cops, cops that, they don't want to go by the rules, they don't play fair. And, that's great for making a compelling story to have these characters that are like that, essentially an anti hero type cop. But in the real world, it's not really the best practice. And, but the thing is, I think news is trying to continue this image that you already see in media, television shows, and movies about cops. I second guess the judgment of cops now because of what I see in the media through news, TV shows, and movies. And it's really unfortunate that the image that we have of police officers in, nowadays, it's really, it affects police officers directly too, because now you see a lot of stories like just recently, earlier this year in March 2014, there were 2 cops in Las Vegas. They were just having lunch at a pizza place and they were just shot at point blank range. And the suspect that shot them shouted, "This is the revolution." And then just earlier this month in October, there was a man who was shooting at police departments in 3 different cities in the state of Washington. And then in 2009, there were multiple shootings in Oakland, California.
Quite a scene here. 4 officers gunned down within a 2-hour time period this afternoon on the streets of Oakland. It all started at 74th and MacArthur. A traffic stop by 2 officers, it appears from Sky 7 video. Those officers were on motorcycles. The suspect shot both officers and took off, and an intense manhunt ensued. Calls for mutual aid going out and air support from CHP in Alameda County. The officers were taken to Highland in critical condition.
And then there were also shootings in 2009 in Lakewood, Washington again. There was a police officer shooting. So it seems that, our negative image of cops, it's affecting the real world because you have people that are actually going against police because there's actually this idea that cops are bad, that they are not doing their job, that they're all corrupt, and that they need to be punished. I feel that, politicians overall are trying to do what needs to be done with cops that are crooked. And unfortunately, it affects every cop out there because not all cops are bad, but there's this image that's being perpetuated that cops are bad and evil. But what do you guys think? Do you feel that police, at least these days, are actually doing what they need to do? Are cops all bad? Do cops still want to uphold the law, or are they just doing it for more nefarious reasons? Let me know in the comments, and like and subscribe if you like the video. I'm posting videos every week, so just tune in next week. If you like what you see, I'll be here with another new topic. And once again, thank you for watching.